Coming up on the Greg and Tim Show podcast.
Has said, Greg's the host. He's the face of the show. Yep. And Tim's the color.
Right.
Tim's the offbeat.
What does that mean, humming along?
Just going.
Like as I paint houses.
I heard you paint houses.
Did your parents have a sewing machine?
Yes, my mom did.
Right.
I think that once we do get sponsors,
yeah,
you will be second in line to read ads.
Welcome to the first ever episode of the Greg and Tim Show podcast. Here are your hosts, Greg and the Tim. I hope I get paid for this.
Thank you, Billy, and we'll see if your check's in the mail. Tim, welcome to the first episode. This is it.
This is the Greg and Tim Show.
First episode.
For episode number 1.
Do you know what we're calling it?
I do not.
It's right on the script right there.
The pilot.
The pilot.
Because we're going to fly planes.
We're not. That's what they call the first episodes of things.
Right.
To see if places will pick them up. Right. So if we have anybody that wants to pick us up.
Pick us up. We're two good-looking guys. We talk a lot about sports and alternate things.
So yeah, welcome to the first episode. I'm Greg, obviously. That over there is...
Timothy.
And we're just two guys who want to chat about things. We're going to chat about sports. We're going to chat about entertainment. We're going to chat about traveling. Traveling is one of the things we like traveling about. Nope.
Are you doing your line and my line? You just continue to repeat your line to my line says, is this pilot episode, we're going to chat about ourselves and bring you some special segments that we think that the audience will love.
Oh, yeah. We are just going to chat about those things.
Yes.
Sounds good. Hey, Tim, do you want to just get on with the first segment of our show?
I do.
Cheers.
Cheers to you, Greg.
Here's to the first episode.
I'm on the naughty list.
And I'm Greg. So, our first topic that we're going to go over, Tim, because some people don't know, a lot of people do, is who are we? Well, and I'd like to know, Tim, who are you?
Well, I am Tim, but let's face it, the two of us individually...
Let's face it, okay. Let's face it.
Greg and Tim individually are quite boring, and we don't need to go over the mundane facts about our individual lives. But together, we are an incredible force to be reckoned with.
A dynamic
Greg
duo.
And Tim. Tim and Greg. You might interchange them, so one is first, one is second, then the second one is first, and the first one is second. It doesn't matter. The point is we are an unstoppable force, and this podcast is going to be amazing.
So the podcast all started back when we were on a trip. We went on this trip in April 2022, and we were at a Blue Jays game. The Blue Jays were losing in the second inning.
7-0.
7-0. So I took out my phone, and this is what we had.
Day one. What's that? We're out here bullpen on day one in the first inning with one out. One out. And you go to your bullpen. Good start. Awesome finish.
So after we had that first interaction on the Greg and Tim show, there's a lot of conversation about Tim wanting it to be the Tim and Greg show, and it never will be, unfortunately, because it's now copywritten.
Okay, let's just stop for a second. Let's talk about this. Why does it have to be Greg and Tim show? Why can't it be the Tim and Greg show? I want, and I think the listeners want to know, because many people have said the Tim and Greg show, but you have said no to that.
That's correct.
And I, myself, and the listeners and the viewers, whatever platform they're, they would like to know why not.
Because I started it.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so I was expecting a longer answer, but now that you've answered it,
and I look at it, and everybody else kind of looks at it that have watched it.
Everybody
else that's watched it has said, Greg's the host. He's the face of the show, and Tim's the color.
Right.
Tim's the offbeat, a little eccentric person on the show. Right. Somebody who generally wears a pink fanny pack.
Well,
And
let's not talk about that. Yes.
consistently-
That's going to be a separate segment.
consistently is different.
Different, yes.
Yeah.
So that means I'm second.
So that makes him second.
That means me second.
Now my chair is squeaking.
Yeah.
What was it?
We'll do the squeaky chair. Squeaky, squeaky. No more squeaky.
So that's where the podcast all started.
Can we start with me explaining it about where it all started from?
Yeah, for
It all
sure.
started in 2022 in April, and we went to Toronto for a Toronto Blue Jays game.
Yeah.
And the Jays were down. I think the Jays were down 7-0.
This was our epic trip.
And they were down. I've been on many epic trips, so this is one of my epic trips. Can't say it's number one, top three for sure. But the Jays were down 7-0.
Yeah.
You remember
This was
what
home
team?
opener.
Remember what team they were against?
Yeah, it was the Seattle Mariners.
Texas Rangers.
Texas Rangers.
Close, very close. Completely different part of the states, but that's fine. 7-0 after 2 or 3 innings,
Marcus Simeon's return to the
yeah.
Blue Jays.
and the season was over.
Game
It was
one.
completely done.
Home opener.
and
7-0.
All of a sudden,
Barrios gets shelled.
7-1, 7-2, 7-3. All of a sudden, 7-4. And remember who popped the 3-run home run?
I do. He plays for the Seattle Mariners.
Or Texas Rangers, whichever one you want to say.
No,
right?
the Seattle Mariners.
Seattle Mariners.
Teoscar Hernandez.
Yeah.
Some would say,
Teo
and then they would say,
Oscar.
Teo.
And so we tied it at 7, and then I think we won 10-8 or 10-9 or something.
It was something crazy. At that point, though, the Jays were on a really good winning streak. They were on pace for...
It was game 1, so they were on pace to go 162-0. I did the math quickly, very quickly
very
in
quick.
my head.
And we checked Google after,
Yeah.
actually.
And that would have been a record. Sadly, the Jays actually lost some games that year, and they did not finish 162-0. However, that would have been great. That
They
would have
did
been
make the
fantastic.
playoffs.
They did make the playoffs and failed
They,
miserably.
they played against the Seattle Mariners.
Yes. And anyways, that trip was not just a Blue Jays game. I went to a couple of Jets games. We drove to New York City, 7 hours, and 7 hours immediately back without staying the night.
Yep.
And I drove 85% of that portion. That's a long story, but I'll get into that another time.
That was a fun drive.
So we had about 4 or 5.
We got
games.
Jimmy John's,
Got Jimmy John's, and
one of my favorites.
one of, I would say, your top 3 restaurants in the U.S. Right?
These are the restaurants I check out. Yeah.
Yeah. So that or the Olive Garden.
No.
One of the two.
No. What's the rule? What's the number one rule when you travel to the United States of America?
So I don't know if our listeners, viewers would like to agree with this, but and we can put this out for a vote. But
Let's put a poll.
when you go to the United States of America, should you go to a restaurant that we have in Canada? Should you go to an Olive Garden? Should you go to an Applebee's? Our rule is no. You're
No.
in the States. Why would you do that? You should go to other restaurants that we cannot have here. And so that's our rule. So I don't
we
know if
only
you disagree
go-
or agree with us, but that is our rule that he was talking about.
That's a road trip rule, and I abide by it, and I know that Tim does as well.
So anyway, that's where we started. We did some podcasts from the game. If you want to go back into the archives and check them out.
There's a best of. Maybe we'll post that one day. Should we post that best of on our channel now?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we'll put the best of up there.
And we had a good time, and a lot of people thought it was some funny segments, and we decided to do a few more later on in the year and a half since that point, and we thought we'd give it a shot, and here we are at the first podcast, which is today. So
This is the one.
that's a little bit of history.
There's other people in the show over the times too. So we had guests on our Instagram story show. We would like to do that same thing on
for
here,
sure. Yeah,
right? That's
absolutely.
the goal, is to get guests and to talk, and sometimes we're gonna laugh.
Huh.
Yes.
And sometimes we won't laugh.
Sometimes
Sometimes there will be
it'll
no laughter at all. Just
It'll be just dead.
me staring
silence.
at the camera. No laughing.
So one of the segments we like to have on the show is called Something You Didn't Know About Tim.
Or Tim Confessionals, or whatever you want to call it. Rare facts about Tim. What else can we title this? Things that you might not know about me. There's a lot of odd things about me that I think there's a lot of odd things about everybody. But for me, There's many odd things. I think we could do a segment every episode.
So,
that's
Tim,
of an odd thing from me.
I want to know. I want to know an odd
I'm
thing
going to
about you.
choose an odd thing about me every episode.
Mm.
That is my desire. That is what I'm going to try to do. And today,
Time for the segment. Something you don't know about Tim. Do go on, tell us more.
so I would like to introduce you to two things. Number one is a fanny pack, shoulder holster.
Holster.
Exactly. I'm not sure which one you want to call it, but let me explain. I'm 47 years old, and I've always carried around my keys, my wallet, and my wallet's huge.
Like a regular human being. Yeah.
Like it's massive, and this is actually smaller than it used to be. So some would say it's a Costanza wallet, but now, when on my last trip to the U.S., I purchased a
Costanza
fanny pack.
referencing George Costanza
Yes,
from the Seinfeld show.
right. But I purchased this fanny pack,
I was there when you purchased it.
and now it holds all these things in something that I can put over top of my shoulder, and I don't have to put things in my pocket. And it's like a revelation. The world has opened up to me. It's like my oyster now because of my fanny pack. I don't have a name for my fanny pack. I'd like to call it Fanny, but maybe that's too obvious. But I wanted to say
Franny.
I love and yes, it's pink. It's pink. I love my pink fanny pack.
So, I was there the day that you purchased this fanny pack,
Yeah.
and I remember how excited you were.
Yeah.
I have a photo of how excited you were, and I'm going to put it up on the screen right now. So, this photo doesn't even capture how happy you were to be
I've never seen this photo. I'm not sure what.
A, Cheesecake Factory,
Yeah.
and B, wearing your fanny pack.
Oh, that picture. That's right. That's that picture.
Yeah, so it was very interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have picked pink, but
I love pink. Anyway, so that's why it's confessionals. It's a pink fanny pack.
Yeah.
Not a lot of guys would be, what's the word? Not a lot of guys
Confident?
would be self-confident enough to share how they love their pink fanny pack. But I'm one of those guys.
yeah, and he loves it.
Love
he wears
it.
it everywhere.
So if any fanny pack company wants to has sponsorships, I'm your guy. This is Jordan. Can we bleep that out? We're not sponsoring.
Can we bleep out?
Can
we blur out?
Can we blur out that?
Billy in post, can you blur this out, please?
I don't think we're getting any money.
Thanks,
any
Billy, if you
sponsorships
can
off of,
take care of
Air
that.
Jordan. So anyway, bye, Fanny.
Yeah. That was something I didn't know about Tim, but I did know that about you. But I'm guessing that most of the listeners didn't
You
know.
should pretend that you don't.
I
can't tell you everything you don't know about
I know.
me. You know, everything.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. If I told you something you didn't know about me, we'd go 2 episodes of the confessionals that you didn't know. It's about them not knowing about me. Because the people out there, most of the people won't know I have a pink fanny pack.
That guy? Does that guy know?
Does that guy know?
Yeah, that guy that's
Who is that
watching.
guy?
That guy that's watching right now. Does he know about your pink
No.
fanny pack? No, exactly. Now he knows.
There are a select few people that know about my
now
pink
there's
fanny pack.
now there's a lot of people that know about your pink fanny pack.
That's right. And this portion of the podcast is brought to you by your business. Greg, do you know if you had a business
Yeah.
and you wanted to have a spot on our program, you could?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you had a business and all these people that listen to us heard about your business through this podcast, our witty, insightful conversations and how we'd plug that in about your product? And,
This is where the product would be plugged.
And we would talk about it and they say, wow, that's a great product.
It'd be like this mug.
But no, you don't want to advertise with us. You could just sponsor us, but you don't have a business or you don't want to, so whatever. Kafooey.
Yeah, so you're missing out.
You're missing out
Because
on
this
the
would be the part
opportunity.
right now
Right now.
where everybody would be watching and they'd be like, oh, I need to buy so-and-so's so-and-so.
That's right. And they boost their awareness of their product and their sales, but too bad. So sad. Maybe next time they'll be smarter and sponsor
The Greg and
this
Tim
portion
podcast.
of this product portion. Blah, 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 blah.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
That was a good ad read, Tim.
Right.
I think that once we do get sponsors,
Yeah.
you will be second in line to read ads. So let's move on. We're going to move on to a little segment we like to call Greg Reads the News. So I get to finally talk a little bit.
Is it going to be like a big sound?
Greg Reads the News. I don't have that big of a budget.
Burp, 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 like a trumpet or something.
Like explosions.
No, but
up
like
here.
the sound. You know how on the national, like when people used to watch the national.
Should I use the Nationals music?
Can you?
Probably.
Legally? Yeah, something like that. Like just you say, because you would say this, and now it's time to read the Canadian news, and you have this big intro.
So let's just cut to the Nationals intro for us.
Yeah.
Does that sound good?
That sounds good.
Okay, Billy, play the intro. Well, let's read the news. And in Canadian news, well, we're on to the next segment of our show. Our show is just humming along right now, Tim. I don't know.
What does that mean, humming along?
Just going.
Like
Like a hummingbird, like really
Is that what
quickly.
it means? Like a hummingbird?
Really, like quickly.
Or is it something just like
the bird's wings just going
Statements like humming along.
What do
Is that a car? Does a car hum?
No.
What does it really mean? Can you look it up?
a hummingbird?
Is that really what it is? Is it a
Yeah,
hummingbird?
let me look up the
Okay, you look it up. I have 10 more
origins
push-ups.
of humming along. What does the idiom humming along mean? Moving along well, nicely progressing, typically used to refer to machinery. Machinery. That's the origin.
I said
Referring
car.
to
I
machinery
did say car, so I was closer.
that is working at top form
Yeah.
and perhaps even making a humming noise, and thusly suggests an efficient process.
Do you remember the sewing machine?
Like an actual sewing,
actual
like the
sewing
singer,
machine?
the singer sewing
Yeah,
machine where
when
you go.
you were growing up, did your parents have a sewing machine?
Yes, my mom did.
Yeah, so did my mom.
My mom had a sewing machine, and my grandma has a sewing machine, and I used one in school.
Yeah, I think that we're the first generation that we don't use a sewing machine.
Well, somebody does.
Yeah, but in the general public, you don't have a sewing machine in your house anymore. Like I would venture, if you are 45 or younger, you don't have a sewing machine in your house.
I would assume that that's probably true,
Right.
but I think it's because we're in a throwaway culture.
Right.
Like we just throw away things.
You purchase something for cheap and then you clothes, whether it be clothes.
Yeah,
or
like
whatever
who
it is.
sews their clothes back up anymore?
So and we always bring it to grandma, right?
We still do.
Right, but it's always grandma. It's never. So this is a lost skill. People are not going to know how to sew.
So in, let's say, 20 years, because people that are 50 right now will be 70.
Yeah.
20 years from now, we will have 0 sewers.
Yeah, I think
in
so.
households.
I think so. Yeah.
But in public places, like where you can go sewing,
Right.
to a place that has sewing.
Like when they manufacture clothes now, you don't use an old-fashioned sewing machine. You use these big machines. I'm assuming, right?
And I've seen like shops that still use the sewing machines.
Right.
I think they still do that.
It just popped into my head because we were saying humming like a machine. I immediately thought of a sewing machine.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Not funny.
The Singer.
A little bit
Weren't
interesting.
They,
Yeah,
weren't
Singer.
they called the Singer?
Yeah, they was the big brand
And
was
they,
Singer.
you would pick it up in this
Yeah.
giant plastic case,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then when you put it down, you unclip the sides, and the giant plastic case came off.
That's right.
And there, underneath the giant plastic case, was a sewing machine.
Yeah.
My mom's, I think, was in her closet.
I think we have one in our house, but I'm not sure. It doesn't work anymore.
Oh, okay.
Is that there in our house or it's in my mom's house?
And they had foot pedals. Do you remember?
Yeah, of course.
It would be, you would control it by your feet.
Yeah, I never used one.
I did it in school.
I did not.
I made shorts in school.
I never used a sewing machine. I don't think I've ever used a sewing machine. Not even in school, nothing.
Huh.
Yeah. Little known facts by Tim Sanderson. I've never used a sewing machine. Confessions.
Confessions of a psychopath.
We should have no, I'm not a psychopath, but so Greg,
But that's cool. I never even really thought about the sewing machine
how many
thing.
trips have we been on, Greg? Like together, just the
So-
two of us, or with other people? How many trips?
So little known fact of most people that know us, we actually met on a trip.
And do you remember what trip that was, Greg?
It was Grey Cup 2019.
And do you remember the context? Grey Cup 2019, the Bombers hadn't won in how many years?
At that time, it would have been 29 years, I think.
That's correct. Yeah. The Grey Cup was in Calgary. We drove down. I think we rented a van.
We rented a van. There were 6 of us that went.
Yeah. And I sort of knew you, but not really.
I knew of you.
Yeah.
From places. I had seen you show up back in the day when I used to work for a particular Winnipeg football club. You used to show up for...
There's not a lot of Winnipeg football clubs. Rhymes with Blue Bombers. Oh, well, I guess I can't revert it too. Rue Dahmers.
We used to have open practices in the morning, and people would show up in the morning at like 7 or 8 in the morning, so I'd have to be there for that. And Tim would walk in his painting coveralls.
Because I paint houses.
I heard you paint houses.
Yes, sir, I do.
Because he paints houses
And
during the day.
not
So he
because
went
of-
and watched the open practice, and then he went to work. But I had seen Tim then, didn't know you, thought you were weird.
Well, if a guy shows up in painter pants to watch the Bomber practices, that's a little strange.
It's a little
I
strange.
don't remember being 7 in the morning. I thought it was in the afternoon, but
It was in the morning. It was always the morning.
Sometimes I remember. Maybe I was on the way to work or something like that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's when our first trip together would have been Grey Cup 2019.
yeah,
We've been on, so since then, Grey Cup 2019, we did the Montreal, Ottawa, New York trip. We did Labor Day 2021. We did Minneapolis 2022 in December. We did BC in 2022 in October. We did
Minneapolis
this year.
about 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. And we've got a big one coming up next year in March.
So the next trip we are planning is, and this is crazy because again I'm 47
Yeah.
and you're what 62.
62.
We're such big baseball fans,
Yeah.
and like until last year I had never been to spring training.
I know, it's crazy that you'd never been.
basi-
I'd been, but yeah.
Baseball spring training, and I went last year, and it was I wasn't planning on going, and my wife and I were changed our trip to.
You're in Arizona.
Arizona. I was like,
Yeah.
well, I could go to a game, so it worked out to go to a game, and I couldn't I couldn't fathom that I was walking in the middle of where like it was like a field almost, and players
Yeah.
are walking past you. Everyone's taking batting practice. You could get 10 balls in a day to sign like baseballs, and like you could you literally your access to the players
Yeah.
is so easy. And I thought, well, why haven't I done this so far? It'd be really cool. So
Yeah.
what we're planning next year is the end of March. We're going to go to Florida, and
We're gonna catch a total of 5 preseason games and 1 Jays season opener.
Jays start the season in Tampa at Tropicana.
Yeah.
Horrible stadium, but it's still the Jays the opener for
The season opener for the
season,
Jays. Yeah.
And
it's indoors,
yeah.
so it's guaranteed to happen.
and it's Florida. So have you heard that apparently the weather is supposed to be? They said Manitoba the worst, like one of the worst winters ever, or something.
Oh, I hope not.
My wife says something about bees and their pollen or something like that. I was like, I don't know.
So are the bees good or bad? Because I hear everybody's trying to save the bees.
It's where they store the pollen. Apparently, the queen bee, or someone can correct me out there, but
Beyonce?
apparently where they store the pollen is different, and that suggests that we're going to have like the worst weather.
So this is
The worst
Beyonce's
winter
fault.
ever. That's all Beyonce. Always Beyonce's
Queen
fault.
Bee.
Yeah, for sure. Is that her nickname? Queen Bee?
Isn't that her nickname, Billy? Queen Bee? Beyonce?
Yeah.
The Beehive or Bayhive or whatever they call her?
I'm not a big Beyonce fan.
No, I know you're not, but that's fine.
You
But
know, you know what I did? I just went to Minneapolis and I saw not Beyonce, but
Chaka Khan.
Yeah, Chaka Khan. And if you want to talk about iconic singers, and she's like, I think she's 70 or something.
I don't even know who Chaka Khan is.
Chaka Khan. Okay. Now, you probably insulted a bunch of listeners who when you said you didn't know who that was. But she's iconic.
Okay.
I could play a few songs. If you heard some of them. There's a Whitney Houston song that she actually originated. That's not a Whitney song that you would know. But you could play a bunch of her stuff.
Okay.
You really like her stuff. So anyways, you just reminded me when you said Beyonce.
That makes sense.
Chaka Khan was 70 and she was putting on a good show. So, but anyway, so
But
So end of March, we're heading to Florida. Going to catch some spring training ball.
Like I said, we're going to see the 5 games. There's going to be 6 or 7 of us again. This is going to be a big one.
Yep.
We've already started recruiting people.
A couple spots left in that group of 7,
Couple
but they're
spots.
filling up quickly. So
Yeah. So it's going to be a great trip. We've already got our flights booked for that, and we're just we're pumped to go and see some baseball, even though baseball's not over yet this year.
no, it's funny. Baseball is one of those sports that they put up the schedule during the season, and they've actually had it out for, I think it's been 2 months already.
Yeah, something like that.
So very few other sports actually do that, where most sports, like let's say hockey, football, basketball, all of them actually
Announced at the draft.
they-
I think they announced at the draft normally,
the,
right?
the season is long gone.
Yeah.
And that's when but baseball is completely different, whereas during the middle of the season they're announcing
Yeah.
the next seasons, which is good for us because we can plan our dates and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
so Greg, today was a significant day in our households. And
In
that
your
was-
household?
your household specifically.
Oh, okay.
Today was the first day of what?
Kids went back to school.
And your kids,
Yeah.
what are the ages? What grades are your kids going into this year?
4 and 2.
4 and 2. So
Yeah.
today was a big day, meeting the teachers, all that stuff. I have an 18-year-old
Yeah.
and a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old. So our 17-year-old, who's our youngest, obviously, she goes back.
Your
to school.
youngest is 17,
17,
not
yes.
the 19 or
When
18-year-old.
When you add all the ages, the
The youngest would be 17. That's true. You're right.
Dividing,
Your math checks
when you
out.
add the 3 and divide by 3, then at the answer.
Yeah, your math works out.
Right. So I almost failed grade 12 math, I'll be honest. But anyway, so she goes back to school tomorrow, and it's kind of the end of an era in that this is the last first day of school, or
First day of high
grades
school.
1 to 12
Yeah.
for all of our kids.
For your kids, yeah.
And so it's going to be a special day. The kids grow up fast. You know what I'm saying?
Our kids are only this young for so long. You know this.
Yeah.
One of yours lives out east now, and the thing is, like, they grow up so fast. And yeah, like, I watch old videos, like, because Mia as a family with my wife and stuff, we do videos, and we do home movies essentially for our kids,
Not those
and
kind of
we
movies.
watch them back and we look at them and we're like, holy smokes, like how small they were just 3 years ago to how they are now. And yeah, time goes by quickly. So using the summer to like appreciate some of the time with them is good.
I see a picture of them when they were younger.
Yeah, they were much younger in that picture.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I, it's bittersweet for them to go back to school. Obviously, it allows me to get more work done
It allows you to plan podcast material.
and plan podcast material and trips.
Yeah.
The main thing is the trips.
Main thing is the trips.
Let's move on to our next segment. So, I put on our Instagram story. If you're not following us, follow us at Greg and Tim Show on Instagram and Twitter. I got us on Twitter, or as they call it now, the X.
They call it the X?
It's just the X.
I actually don't know my Twitter password, so I'm not on Twitter.
Yeah, but our show has a Twitter.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll
Our
send
show
you-
has a Twitter. Greg will have to share with me.
I'll send
About
you
the
the
Twitter.
password, and it's called X now.
Right.
It's not called Twitter.
It's called X.
It's just an
a
X.
big X.
Just the symbol X. It's like the artist formerly known as Twitter.
So it's the app formerly known as Twitter.
That's right. Also known as X.
Yeah. Who was the artist formerly known as?
Prince.
Yes.
He was Prince.
It was Prince, right? No.
So I put out a thing that said, "Hey, send us your questions."
Yeah.
And I got a bunch of questions. I don't want you to read them ahead of time, so I'm gonna read them out to you.
Shoot, go ahead, Greg.
And then
I'm ready.
We'll go from there. So
Are these
the
questions
first,
for me?
no, they're for both of us. But
so they're just
I have
they're
I have
topics.
access to them.
There's topics.
They're kind of topics, yes.
Okay. Shoot.
So things that we, what do you want to know?
Yeah.
And one of the questions was, tell us about yourselves. We kind of already did that, so I'm going to skip over that question.
It's a bit of a vague question. I don't like it.
How do you know each other? We talked about that. Which other podcast inspired you? Do you listen to podcasts?
No. So it's a very difficult question for me to answer. I don't.
You don't listen to any podcasts?
No.
None whatsoever?
No. I just listen to messages that I get like up YouTube stuff.
Okay.
No podcast. I think you've always wanted to have a podcast. And if you know anything about Greg, which maybe you do, a lot of people you do out there, some people don't, but
Yeah.
Greg is very good about putting these things together. So I'm very appreciative of that. But all these little things that happen, cameras, video clips. He's very good at that. I'm not. So, but I think that's something that you would enjoy doing, and
It's fun
and
for me.
certainly we have some kind of banter back and forth here. But
Yep.
I'm sorry I don't have a podcast. I don't listen to pod. Maybe I should. That'll be my next
So
challenge.
the question is,
Listen to
why
podcasts.
did you start the podcast? I think we kind of just got into that. Like we wanted to chat and we wanted to have fun, and I like editing this kind of stuff and having fun with this. And every now and again, we'll put a little bleep in there, and it'll be Tim's voice that gets bleeped.
We're gonna try to make this all funny.
It's gonna be hard. This podcast doesn't really seem that funny so far.
So is that really?
So maybe a tough edit. I might actually put somebody else's podcast on instead.
That hurts.
That hurts, yeah.
That hurts. I'm 50% of this effort.
The next questions get a little bit more difficult.
51%.
The next questions get a little bit more difficult.
shoot.
And let me see if you can guess who asks these
Apparently, I
questions.
have to be more interesting. So
Who's your favorite child?
ask again.
Who's your favorite
Avery.
child? And
again.
who's your favorite child?
Taylor.
I thought you were going to say Raina again. So the next question is there a rule about not talking about your children on the podcasts?
I don't think any of my children will. I think they'll all like to be spoken about on the podcast. Maybe Avery, but I think she kind of plays it up like she's embarrassed, but I think she kind of likes it. So
So who do you think asked that question?
is there a rule? It's probably Avery.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding. We
So
should have a little ding, ding.
Can you now that I know who asked the question, can you say the question again?
Is there a rule about not talking about your children on the podcast?
Clearly, she doesn't want me to talk about her on the podcast based inference on the question.
But you've already talked a little bit, so we'll see how that works out.
I haven't said anything about Avery that specifically, have I? I didn't.
No,
I didn't
you
say her
just
name
you
till
just said that she was
now. Favorite. Yeah.
your favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go with the least.
And
favorite.
then the
And
last question
last
is
question, shoot.
who's your favorite offspring, and go in depth.
that was the same question.
Yeah,
So it's two of my kids asked the same question.
maybe.
Maybe
Yes.
offspring sounds like Taylor asked that question because she speaks in that kind of language.
Okay.
And it can't be Avery because she wouldn't ask the same question.
Okay.
And Raina's not really around to.
And who's your
ask
favorite
the
child was asked by?
Raina.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You know your children.
Yeah. I honestly,
They're very conscious about who you talk about and what you talk about.
Yeah, but I haven't. Yeah, favorite offspring. Yeah, Taylor would use that kind of language.
So you're not going to say your favorite offspring,
Right.
but your favorite child was Raina.
Well, I said all three. I didn't know which question.
The only one I heard you say was Raina.
Well, yeah, the one you're keeping. Don't do that. That's horrible. Why did you say that Brandon was your favorite? You know how many problems that's going to create? I don't need problems.
What is it
I
like
don't
living in
want
a house
problems.
with
I
4
have
women?
My wife.
Now you're down to 3 women and a dog that's also
No.
female.
So let's, I have my wife, obviously.
Yeah.
19-year-old who's gone, but she's still my daughter. 19-year-old daughter, 18-year-old daughter,
Yep.
17-year-old
Yep.
doctor.
Doctor? Wow. That's why she doesn't want you to talk about her. She's already a doctor.
17-year-old daughter, and I have a 4.5-year-old dog
Yeah.
who is a female.
Yeah.
And we all know what they're called. And so I have 5 females in the house, and
Yeah.
there's lots of estrogen, and
How do you find that?
oftentimes very loud.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
It's a pleasure. I enjoy every moment of my time at home. Right.
So if anybody has any questions before the next podcasts, we will put out another story closer to the next podcast where you can ask more questions and be featured on the podcast.
The Greg and Tim Show
The Greg and Tim Show.
podcast.
The podcast.
Just podcast. I think it's the
Greg
podcast.
and Tim Show.
Is it the podcast?
Just
the
podcast.
Podcast.
Greg and Tim Show
The
podcast.
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 Ready?
Yeah.
Greg and Tim Show
Show
podcast. Yes.
I said podcasted.
Weeks ahead of you. Anything ahead this week? Anything that you got going on that you are looking forward to?
This Sunday, we're golfing together.
Right. We have a golf tournament.
And how many times have you golfed in the last year, Greg?
Twice.
You know how many times I've golfed in the last year?
Well, no, sorry. Last year I golfed twice.
Yeah, so this year since...
This year I've golfed 0.
And me too, I've golfed 0.
No, I golfed once. Never mind. One time.
Yeah, I golfed no times, and...
So I'm 100% more of a golfer than you.
That's not how the math works, but let's assume it is. We're not very great at
We're not the greatest at golfing,
So we are in a team of 4, and we'll see how badly we do. The sad thing is after not golfing for a year, I'm pretty much as good as the rest of our foursome. And that is a sad state of affairs about...
I'm not that bad.
You're not that good either.
No, but I'm not as bad.
No, it's not that good either.
So golfing Sunday.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do some impromptu updates on Sunday. 1 in the bush is worth
2 in the hand.
2 in the hand.
Hand. I said hand.
What'd you say? Hand? 1 in the bush is worth 2 in the hand?
I don't
What's
know
the
saying.
hand?
I guess I
Do
went...
you not know the saying?
No.
You've never heard that saying?
I have, but I went for it and I got the wrong
And you
word.
got that wrong. You've heard the saying,
2 in the hand.
but you've always heard it hen.
2 in the hand. Because that makes sense to me. It does. No,
Yeah, your
doesn't.
chair is so squeaky.
So, squeaky.
So, anyway, I want to thank everybody that's been following us on Instagram so far. We've got a few new followers, and I want to thank everybody who's subscribing to our channel on YouTube because, without people watching, what's the point?
What's the point indeed? Can I add it only goes up from here, Greg? Can I add
think
that?
you have to remember, this is the pilot.
This is the pilot.
So we're just taking the plane off.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Boom.
Well, we all learned something today.
We all learned something.
I hope you learned something today. But did you learn something today?
This is like a romper room exit. And all you kids at home, I see Billy. I see Joni. Do you ever watch? Do you watch Romper Room when you were a kid?
No.
You don't? Do you remember the show Romper Room?
No.
Ding dong, ding dong, diddy doo, loop a toop roop toop Romper Room. Hey, loop a Romper Room. And at the end, she would look into the camera and she'd say, "And saying goodbye to all my friends, to Jimmy, to David, to Joni, to Lizzie," and you'd wait for your name to be called.
Was your name
As you're
ever called?
I remember I was like 8 years old.
Oh. So this was a long time ago.
No, I don't think Tim was ever called.
How could they not call Tim? Tim's a normal name.
Yeah, I know, but it was like Johnny and Frankie and all these Italian names. I don't know, with an IE at the end. Anyways, so Romper Room. You don't remember Romper Room? I feel like an old guy up here. Like I am the cagey old veteran, and you're the young gun.
Okay, well, Tim,
Well, Greg,
we've gotten to the end of the episode.
hopefully. We'll see how much we have to fill in at the end. It is the end of the episode, yes.
Anything you want to say to end the episode?
Stay fit and have fun.
And I see Dan and Vivian, I see Marlon and Mona, I see Catherine and Harley, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room. Ding dong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Thanks for watching the Greg and Tim Show podcast. See you again next week. These guys can only get better with practice. Remember to share, subscribe and all that stuff. Man, I need a coffee.